Discover the touching moment a shopkeeper sheltered a stranger. Little did he know it was Jesus. The wind screamed through the streets of Maplewood, rattling the windows of Thompson's Hardware, a small bastion of tradition in an increasingly uncertain world. Eli Thompson stood at the counter, his hands trembling as he sorted through a mess of supplies. For over a decade, this store had been his lifeline, the last remnants of his father's legacy. Each rusted tool, every stack of lumber carried the weight of expectations inherited from a man he adored and feared to disappoint. But now, as he surveyed the half-empty shelves, a creeping desperation gnawed at him. Sales were declining, and uncertainty loomed over his ability to provide for his teenage daughter, Lily, whose dreams of college felt increasingly out of reach. Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled, breaking the weight of silence. Eli looked up, barely registering the figure that stumbled inside. The stranger was drenched, clothes torn, face weary, as he sought refuge from the relentless winter storm. Without a thought, Eli ushered him in. "You look like you could use some coffee," Eli offered, grabbing a cup from the back. It felt good, though fleeting, to perform an act of kindness, something his father had taught him was essential to maintain a sense of community. The man gratefully accepted the coffee, taking a seat as he sipped slowly, appreciating the warmth. Eli instinctively shared his troubles, his voice heavy with worry. "I don't know what's going to happen to this place, or how to keep it alive for Lily. She deserves a future." As those words slipped out, Eli's heart raced, the vulnerability illuminating a truth he usually buried deep. Before Eli could process the depth of his confession, the stranger leaned forward, his calm demeanor radiating an unexpected wisdom. "We often measure our worth in numbers, but what truly counts are the connections we make," he intoned. Those words struck Eli to his core, igniting a swirl of emotions. He felt anger, a fierce independence that urged him to resist the idea of relying on others. Yet beneath that, desperation dragged him down, forcing him to confront the reality that he had alienated himself from the town's lifeblood. As the storm howled like a wild beast outside, the warmth inside the store faded, replaced by a chill of isolation. Though Eli tried to project strength, he realized he had built walls around himself, hoarding his struggles like precious secrets. Could it be that he had been so busy fighting to maintain his father's legacy that he forgot its true essence? The notion of vulnerability froze him, muscles tensed like coiled wires ready to snap. Before they could delve deeper, Eli heard a soft rumbling, his thoughts interrupted. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Eli shook off the distraction, but the weight of his internal conflict was magnified. The clock ticked ominously as he faced a question that clawed at him from inside. Could he really change the way he engaged with his life and community? When Eli turned his gaze back to his cup of coffee, the stranger was gone, only a worn piece of paper left in his spot. It spoke of faith and transformed relationships. Eli's pulse quickened. Could this encounter have meant something more profound? Something that would alter his path forever? Standing amid the stark emptiness of the store, Eli felt a mixture of dread and hope. The storm outside had transformed the world, but could his own storm lead to renewal? The echoing absence of the stranger left a tangled knot in his stomach, the possibilities awakening a new hunger for connection. But what would that mean for him and Lily moving forward? Eli paced behind the counter, fingers brushing against the rough wood, seeking comfort in the familiar. The piece of paper left by the stranger lay before him, words echoing in his mind. "The connections we make," he whispered to himself, thoughts tangled in a web of confusion and clarity. Until that moment, he had never fully acknowledged the disconnection he felt from the town. He had invested years in building a fortress of solitude, mistakenly believing that self-reliance was the hallmark of strength. But strength bore a price, a steep isolation that kept him and Lily from the community that once thrived in this very space. He glanced at the clock. Closing hours loomed closer, but the store felt like a prison. Each tick reminded him of time slipping away, both for his business and his daughter's future. Thoughts of Lily's ambitions, her dream of college, gnawed at him. He had always wanted to be the foundational pillar of support for her, yet he felt like the ground beneath their feet was crumbling. This vulnerability was an ache that he had long tried to ignore. The stranger's words lingered, conjuring a spark within him. What if he let down his guard? What if he reached out instead of holding everything in? With an unexpected surge of determination, he unfolded the paper and read it again. The script spilled forth lines that beckoned renewal, words about faith that felt intangible yet deeply needed. Eli realized he did not have to shoulder his burdens alone. The shift in perspective was the first step toward resolution. He grabbed his phone, hesitating as he thumbed through contacts. It took only moments to find the number of an old friend, Marcus, who used to work in business development. They had drifted apart over the years, but Eli felt a pull, an instinct to reconnect. As the phone rang, nerves danced in his stomach. Would Marcus even remember him? Eli, it's been a while. Marcus's warm tone bolstered Eli's courage. A flood of memories rushed back, laughter, ideas shared over coffee, the spark of innovation that once arose between them. Hey, Marcus, I could use your advice, Eli admitted, voice shaky but resolute. My store is struggling, and I'm not sure how to pivot. The conversation flowed, steered by mutual respect and camaraderie. Marcus shared strategies, offered insights on adapting marketing approaches to engage the community. Ideas blossomed like wildflowers in Eli's mind, his heart racing with renewed hope. This call transformed something within him. He began to see that vulnerability didn't equate to weakness. It represented the audacity to connect, to ask for help, to open doors that had long remained closed. Let's meet up, Marcus suggested before they hung up. I'd love to brainstorm together over coffee. As Eli ended the call, he felt the weight lift, optimism weaving through his thoughts. Was this what it truly meant to forge connections? Could he build a network that not only rejuvenated his business, but also fortified his relationship with Lily? He imagined taking her to community events, involving her in the store's revival efforts. Ideas flooded in as he cleaned up for the night, resolutely advancing through the existing inventory. They were no longer just tools and materials. They would transform into projects. Standing in the store, surrounded by all that his father had built, Eli felt a stirring within, a growing resolve to step out of solitude, into the world, to nurture connections, to seek the wisdom of others. The storm outside had quelled, yet Eli found himself standing at the precipice of personal change, teetering between what was comfortable and what was promising. Could he summon the courage to reach out to other townsfolk, some of whom he had alienated over the years? What if they too had insights that could fortify his future? With his heart thumping, Eli took a deep breath, fueled by renewed ambition. The moment had come to confront his fears and seek the support he desperately needed to steer not only his store, but also his relationship with Lily toward brighter days. But the next step wasn't mere connection, it was transformation. As he prepared for the days ahead, a sense of urgency drove him to contemplate. What if the next call he made shifted the course of both their lives forever? Eli woke early the next morning, sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the dusty corners of his store. The night had delivered broken sleep, filled with restless thoughts of what lay ahead. But today was different. He could feel it in his bones. Today, he would act on the resolve that had surged through him only hours prior. He brewed a pot of coffee, the scent filling the cramped space, invigorating his buzz. Senses. Each sip felt like a tonic, stirring a mixture of anxiety and determination within him. He had made a promise to himself to confront the disconnect that had marred his life for too long, and it was time to put his words into motion. The first step was simple, yet monumental. He picked up the phone again and dialed a number he hadn't called in years, Julia, the owner of the local bakery. Their relationship had soured after a disagreement about a shipment that Eli had mismanaged years ago. Recalling their shared laughs felt foreign now, but it was time to mend what had been broken. When her familiar voice came through the line, he felt a rush of vulnerability. "Julia, it's Eli from the hardware store," he managed, swallowing the knot in his throat. "I know it's been a while, but I'd really like to talk. I think we've both let pride get in the way." Silence lingered for a moment, laden with the weight of history. Then she sighed, softer than he had remembered. "Eli, it's good to hear from you. I'd be open to meeting." A flicker of hope ignited in his chest. As they arranged to meet later that afternoon, Eli could see the paths branching before him, all the possible conversations waiting to unfold. In that moment of connection, he felt the chains of isolation beginning to loosen. Hours later, as he walked to the bakery, his mind raced through the myriad ways the meeting could go. Would Julia welcome him? Would she recall the wounds they had both carried? He opened the door, and the warm, yeasty aroma wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. "Eli," Julia called, a smile illuminating her face. They embraced awkwardly, a moment of shared laughter breaking through the past. Their conversation began uneasily, words stumbling out as they both skirted around the hurt. But as they spoke about business, the weather, and Lily, something shifted. Old wounds began to heal, revealing a shared passion for their town and its future. They brainstormed ideas, crafting strategies that combined their expertise. The wheels of creativity started to turn. Eli proposed a joint effort, promotions that could benefit both their businesses and re-engage the community, nurturing the connections he desperately sought. To his surprise, Julia was enthusiastic. Her eyes lit up with possibilities he hadn't envisioned. By the time they parted ways, Eli felt invigorated. He'd not only rekindled an important bond, but had also reopened a chapter of his life that had long felt shut. The resolve he had felt earlier now manifested in tangible plans, a palpable promise of a brighter future for both him and Lily. Days turned into a week, and as Eli continued to expand his circle, reaching out to others such as Marcus and Julia, something unexpected dawned upon him. A sense of belonging was beginning to flower again. Conversations became interactions, interactions morphed into collaborations. As he stood amidst his newly arranged store, displays filled with fresh inventory, inspired by input from his network, he felt pride begin to swell within him. But behind the veil of progress lurked shadows of doubt. Would this newfound connection last? Were they merely fleeting interactions, or could they blossom into deeper, meaningful relationships? As he locked up his store that evening, his heart raced at the thought of the next important conversation he had yet to initiate. Standing in the quiet of the night, he reminded himself, courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward regardless. There was someone else he had been avoiding, an old nemesis, now just another neighbor in need of a connection. Eli felt the weight of what lay ahead. The time had come to face the one man he dreaded to face, Todd, who held both secrets and grievances. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation that could either secure his position in the community or unravel all he had built. Would he finally confront Todd? And if so, what truths would emerge from the shadows of their past? Eli had navigated through tangled threads of past grievances, but none unsettled him quite like the prospect of facing Todd. As he replayed their history, snippets of arguments, accusations, and the icy silence that had replaced camaraderie, his mind drifted to a darker place. The memories haunted him, replete with the echo of Todd's disdain and Eli's own failures. He began to question his readiness to engage. Could he confront the man who once demoralized him and now stood between him and a thriving future? Each contemplation tightened the knot in his stomach. Nevertheless, Eli knew he couldn't hold his ground in maturity and growth while circumventing this critical confrontation. "Step out of the shadows, Eli," a voice urged from deep within. Each glance at his cluttered store led him farther into that mindset. Each tool, gadget, and paint can became a symbol of potential he had neglected for too long. Taking the stairs two at a time, he arrived at his apartment, its smallness offering both comfort and restraint. He rummaged through a kitchen drawer until he found a pen and notepad. Writing his thoughts was a new strategy he had begun to explore. If he wanted to articulate his feelings during the discussion, he needed to acknowledge them first. Under the heading, "Things I Want to Say to Todd," he jotted down bullet points. Acknowledge past mistakes, listen more than I speak, and find a common ground. The act of writing rendered those abstract fears tangible, drastically altering his perception. Later that evening, Eli paced the floor of his sparsely furnished living room, crumpling the list nervously in his hands. It wasn't so much fear of Todd, but a deeper trepidation that coursed through him. The anxiety that he would not be listened to, that his aspirations would be dismissed as childish. He took a deep breath and repeated the mantra he'd begun to adopt. Courage is moving forward, no matter the cost. That very thought propelled him through the threshold of his apartment the next afternoon and directly toward Todd's hardware shop. Found in the same bustling district, Todd's store seemed unchanged, its faded sign a testament to the past. Eli paused outside, watching customers file in and out, greeted by a man who, despite his distance, had once been a mentor. He steeled himself before pushing through the door. The soft jingle of the bell echoed like a warning. Todd looked up, his reaction a mix of surprise and guardedness. Eli felt the tension in the air thickening, wrapping around both men like a vine ready to strangle. "Eli," Todd finally spoke, though his tone remained neutral. "What brings you here?" The confrontation had begun. Eli hesitated, a primordial urge to revert to silence gnawing at him. But he reminded himself of Julia and the power of rekindling connections. "I wanted to talk about us, about the past." Todd's expression shifted, but still bore a hint of skepticism. Eli pressed on, hesitant words tumbling out. They discussed the past missteps, what led to their rift, and how misunderstandings had built an insurmountable wall between them. As he spoke, he felt layers peel away, each word a hammer, breaking down the wall not only between them, but within himself. "We were both at fault," Eli admitted, finding strength he didn't know he had. Todd's brow furrowed and his eyes narrowed slightly, perhaps considering Eli's vulnerability. But just then, a nervous energy washed over Eli. This was a pivotal moment. The audacity to hope for understanding could either propel him forward or dismantle him altogether. "I hope we can find a way to work together," he said, voice steadier than he felt. Silence descended as Todd's expression shifted, uncertainty clouding his face. Eli's heart raced, palpable in its insistence on resolution. "What happens if he rejects my hand?" The question loomed large, threatening to choke Eli's burgeoning determination. Todd remained quiet for a moment, deep in thought. Then the tension cracked, revealing a flicker of a potential bridge being built, not by words, but by the willingness to engage. It wasn't a conclusion, but it was a beginning. "What do you say we grab a coffee?" Todd suggested, a cautious curiosity threading his voice. Eli hesitated but nodded, feeling a curious mix of relief and apprehension that painted laughter in the spaces of his anxiety. As they stepped outside, he couldn't help but think about how he managed to confront his past. But the greater question lurked ominously. Would he embrace the chance to cultivate this reconciliation? Their journey ahead stood shrouded in uncertainty, but Eli felt the warmth of courage bloom, and he dared to dream of a harmony he never thought possible. What choice awaited him in this emerging partnership? And how would it shape the course of his business and life? The unfolding narrative was far from finished. As they walked toward the cafe, tucked into the corner of the street, Eli felt an odd mix of excitement and anxiety. Each step echoed a familiar rhythm he associated with past failures. The air around him pulsed with the possibility of new beginnings, yet the past danced just out of reach, reminding him of the wounds that had not fully healed. He realized there was an unsettling challenge in sharing coffee with Todd, one he had to face head-on. This was more than an attempt at reconciliation. It was a careful negotiation of respect, acknowledgement, and perhaps even redemption. What if the past lingered in their conversation, tangling their hopes and bitterness once more? Eli clenched his fists, relishing the warmth in the coffee shop that contrasted starkly with the chill of his thoughts. Could he shake off the emotional baggage that clung to him like a second skin? Settling at a small table, the ambiance buzzed with casual chatter. Todd's expression softened upon taking a seat across from Eli, and for the first time, he appeared more like the mentor Eli remembered rather than the antagonist he had dreaded. The coffee aromas wrapped around them as he made a conscious choice to listen, not just to Todd's words, but to the silence that surrounded them, pregnant with history. "Thanks for agreeing to this," Eli began cautiously, the words rolling off his tongue like a fragile truce. He fought the impulse to apologize for the past. It was a tricky line to navigate. He wanted to assert himself while also bridging their divide. "I think we both know things got pretty messy between us." Todd nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup, as if searching for the right words floating just out of reach. "Yeah, we lost sight of what mattered most." Eli noticed the unusual vulnerability etched into Todd's face. It was a crack in the armor that had long shielded him. The conversation flowed more easily than Eli anticipated. They discussed misunderstandings, perhaps even the genuine missteps that had caused the rift. With each shared moment of reflection, Eli confronted the potency of their past. Yet, layered beneath each confession lay an unfulfilled yearning. Could they move beyond these bounds of bitterness? After a time, they gravitated toward discussing their current endeavors. Eli spoke openly about the dreams for his store. "I want it to be a place that nurtures creativity," he said, the words now cascading from him like wellsprings. "A hub for artisans to share ideas, a place where innovation is welcomed rather than stifled." He caught a flicker of admiration in Todd's eyes, a light that stirred something deep within him. But then came a cringe-worthy recollection. "I remember how I shied away from suggestions you made in the past. I regret that." His voice dropped, burdened by sincerity. For a brief moment, Todd seemed taken aback. Then he took a deep breath, revealing an openness Eli hadn't anticipated. "I appreciate you saying that. I wasn't always easy to deal with myself." The admission felt like a breakthrough, echoing Eli's own brand of vulnerability. This willingness to confront their past led to the forging of an unsteady bond capable of holding them up. They began to explore how to collaborate rather than compete, exchanging ideas and actions that appealed to both their strengths. The evolution of their connection flickered with promise, transforming the acrimony of yesteryears into a foundation for new professional endeavors, a potential partnership that seemed improbable just moments ago. Yet, an underlying question began to form in Eli's mind. What if rekindling this relationship proved more challenging than either anticipated? Despite their open dialogue, the shadows of their past loomed large, an insidious reminder that reconciliation comes with its own sets of trials. As they finished their coffee, Eli felt an undeniable sense of purpose surging through him. Perhaps this was the beginning of something transformative, a step not just toward partnership, but personal evolution. Could he withstand the uncertainties that might still lie ahead? Standing to leave, he felt a weight lift, a mix of hope and trepidation, but also the late realization that engaging with Todd meant he would need to confront the trappings of his own insecurities head-on. It was time to dismantle internal roadblocks and step fully into the emerging narrative of his newly revitalized life. Yet, as they prepared to part ways, Todd leaned in closer. "We should meet again soon and discuss more ideas." Eli nodded, his response infused with both certainty and doubt. "Absolutely." But deep within, Eli wrestled with the inevitable truth. Building this bridge with Todd would mean confronting not just his past with him, but the real test lay in overcoming his own lingering fears of inadequacy. Would he be ready to meet those challenges as they inevitably arose? The next chapter was about to unfold, filled with promise and peril alike. Eli stepped out of the cafe, the crisp air rushing in to fill the space left behind by the warmth of his conversation. A mix of determination and anxiety swirled within him. The shadows of his past intertwined stubbornly with the thrill of his ambitions. He had rekindled a connection with Todd, yet the ghosts of their disagreements loomed like specters ready to shatter this delicate truce. With each step away from the cafe, he became increasingly aware of the choices lying ahead. Returning home, Eli felt a familiar tug in his chest. Doubt. The lingering echoes of self-criticism whispered aggressively in his mind. What if he failed this time? What if Todd reconsidered the partnership? He fought the urge to spiral into a labyrinth of what-ifs and instead clung to the other side of this internal struggle: hope. With Todd's support, he could redefine his vision. After a fitful night's sleep, Eli awoke with newfound resolve that radiated through the morning light filtering into his room. Today would be different. Today he would take actionable steps toward his dream, conquering the complacency that once held him. Prisoner. He grabbed a notebook, flipping through pages he had filled with sketches and ideas. The words began to pour out, not just ideas for his shop, but affirmations for himself. "I am capable of creating something beautiful. I can foster a space of innovation," he wrote fervently. As his pen moved across the page, the act of articulating his aspirations grew cathartic, loosening the hold of his insecurities. Each sentence seemed to fortify his self-belief. By midday, Eli was ready. He would implement a community outreach initiative, reaching out to local artisans and encouraging collaboration, inviting others into the dream he was building. His heart raced slightly at the thought of sharing his vision openly. There was a spark of fear, yes, but he recognized it as a sign of growth. Stepping out of his comfort zone wasn't just necessary, it was inevitable. With his heart pounding and a sense of urgency tugging at him, Eli began drafting an email to potential collaborators. His fingers danced across the keyboard, summoning the essence of hope and excitement into words. With each sentence, he could feel the weight of his fears dissipating just a little more. In this moment, he was no longer just a shopkeeper plagued by doubt. He was an architect of a community, eager to connect and cultivate creativity. However, as he hovered over the send button, hesitation gripped him once more. What if they rejected him? What if they laughed at his ideas just as he once had? Breathing deeply, he fought the mounting anxiety. "No," he murmured to himself, "those days are behind me." He pressed send while swallowing hard against the rush of adrenaline coursing through him. Eli leaned back in his chair, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. The act of reaching out was liberating, but now the anticipation of their responses sat heavy on his shoulders. Would they see the value in his vision? Would Todd be on board with this initiative? The thought of arranging another meeting with Todd buzzed in his mind while he tried to clear it. This second meeting loomed on the horizon, a promise of potential renewed connections. Would there be new revelations and challenges? As he mulled over the uncertainty, a more pressing notion took root. How much of himself was he willing to reveal this time? Navigating the spectrum between vulnerability and assertiveness felt precarious, yet he knew it was necessary. His eyes drifted to the window where the light began to dim, a reflection of his inner turmoil. The stakes felt higher now, and he had to brace himself for whatever lay ahead. And just as he resolved to stay grounded amid the uncertainty, his phone buzzed with a notification. A rapid heartbeat announced that Todd had replied to his previous message. Eli's breath caught. Was this a turning point or merely another hurdle to leap? As he opened the message, the nagging question lingered in his mind. Was he truly prepared to face whatever revelations the next meeting might bring? Eli's heart raced as he read Todd's message, the words flickering on the screen like a pulse echoing through the stillness of his room. Todd's response was straightforward, yet it carried the weight of expectation. "Let's meet tomorrow at 10. I'd like to hear more about your ideas." A mix of relief and trepidation surged through Eli. This was an opportunity to elevate his vision, but the pressure felt immense. As the clock ticked away the hours, Eli found himself unable to focus on anything but the upcoming meeting. His mind wrestled with his thoughts. What points should he emphasize? What aspects of his plan would resonate with Todd? Each consideration felt like another layer of preparation, building excitement but equally amplifying his self-doubt. He envisioned the meeting room, with its stark white walls and sterile lighting, framing a conversation that could shift his career trajectory. But beyond the practicalities lurked an unsettling fear. What if Todd challenged him? What if his aspirations crumbled under scrutiny? Eli wrestled with an impulse to retreat into his old patterns, to shield himself from vulnerability. Yet, within that discomfort lay a seed of acknowledgement. He was no longer the Eli who allowed fear to dictate his choices. Determined to approach the meeting with clarity, Eli spent the remainder of the day reviewing his notes, refining the community initiative he'd proposed in his email. The idea of bringing together local artisans had blossomed in his mind, transforming into a comprehensive vision for a creative haven. It wasn't just about collaboration, it was about forging connections, igniting inspiration, and cultivating a culture where creativity could thrive. At the same time, he recognized a painful truth. He could no longer silence the internal critic that threatened to overshadow his enthusiasm. Questions gnawed at him. Would Todd laugh at his ambitions? Would he dismiss the importance of forging connections? Each thought brought forth waves of anxiety that he had to quell. "Focus on what you can create," he whispered to himself, grounding in purpose amid the turmoil. When morning light broke through his window, it felt like a clarion call for action. Eli dressed deliberately, choosing a navy blazer that communicated confidence but also relatability. He practiced his pitch in the mirror, contorting his face into a mask of determination, though beneath it the nerves fluttered. He recalled a time when he had shied away from similar challenges, when self-sabotage had shaped his narrative. "Not this time," he affirmed, seeing the resolve reflected in his gaze. At exactly 10, Eli entered the cafe where they had agreed to meet. The aroma of coffee wrapped around him, soothing yet invigorating. Todd was already at a corner table, flipping through papers. Eli's heartbeat quickened at the prospect of engaging with someone who had once inspired him, yet also epitomized his own past failures. "Hey, Eli, good to see you," Todd greeted, flashing an inviting smile. Eli returned the gesture, but the friendly facade masked the tumult within. They exchanged light conversation that felt almost necessary before the gravity of the impending discussion settled in. Eli cleared his throat and leaned forward. It was time to lay bare his aspirations. "I've been thinking about how collaboration can really shape our creative community," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. He outlined his initiative passionately, his words taking on a life of their own as he detailed the idea of a shared space that celebrated individual artistry. As he spoke, he noticed Todd's expression shift, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. Eli's confidence surged, but just as quickly the fear of inadequacy came crashing back. The memory of past strains in their relationship, the unkind words exchanged during heated debates, tangled with his ambition. "Have you considered the risks?" Todd interjected, his brows knitting in thought. Eli flinched at the familiar pang of criticism. but he steadied himself against the impulses of defensiveness rising within him. This was not an adversarial confrontation. Todd was not dismissing him, merely advocating for careful consideration. Eli inhaled deeply and responded, "Honestly, yes, but the true risk may lie in doing nothing. Creative energy stagnates when it's not nurtured." For a moment, silence stretched between them, a fragile tension where their past and future coalesced. Would this meeting mark a transition from their earlier conflicts to a shared vision? Or would their unresolved issues fracture the tenuous alliance again? With Todd leaning back, a thoughtful expression washing over his face, Eli wondered if he was finally priming the doorway to a new chapter in their relationship. But just then, Todd's phone buzzed, jolting the moment. Would this be the distraction that derailed their conversation? Eli's pulse quickened as he watched Todd's face falter, his expression a mixture of surprise and concern. The text message illuminated the screen like an omen. What was about to unfold? Would it bring clarity, or would it cast shadows over the conversation they had yet to finish? The anticipation was palpable, leaving Eli questioning everything once more. Todd's expression darkened, his attention fully absorbed by the message vibrating against the table. Eli's heart pounded in response. He couldn't help but feel the sudden shift in energy. This was not just a simple interruption. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken words, as Eli grappled with the reality of what Todd was reading. It felt like an eternity before Todd pulled his attention back to the conversation. "Sorry about that," he said, his tone laced with distraction that only heightened Eli's anxiety. "I really appreciate you sharing your ideas. There's a lot to unpack here." Eli caught a glimpse of Todd's hesitation, and for the first time, he wanted to seize the initiative rather than wade through uncertainty. "Thank you, Todd. I just want to create something transformative," Eli pressed, inching forward. "It's more than just getting people together. It's about igniting passion and innovation. Imagine a space where anyone, regardless of their background, can come and be inspired." Eli locked eyes with Todd, searching for signs of encouragement, but Todd's expression remained inscrutable. The silence that followed felt like another distraction, a test of Eli's resolve. Did Todd see the vision, or was he still held back by reservations? "Sure, and I can see the potential here," Todd replied carefully, but Eli sensed the cautiousness beneath his words. "However, you need a plan. Insights and dreams are great, but execution is crucial. If it's just a pie-in-the-sky idea without a foundation, you'll struggle." Eli felt the weight of that statement, like a boulder positioning itself atop his already fragile confidence. Execution. He knew this was the key element he had struggled with in his previous attempts. But this time felt different. Wasn't he ready to conquer this challenge? "I've been working on further defining the logistics. I know I still need to nail down partnerships and resources. I'm actively making connections, planning workshops, and even contemplating local sponsorship. I feel like my vision is taking shape." He sounded more assertive than before. The tremor in his voice that had accompanied his discussions in the past began to fade. This was not a call for validation. It was a proclamation of commitment to his own journey. "That's great, Eli," Todd said slowly, nodding in appreciation as he began to warm to the discussion. Yet, Eli detected something in Todd's manner that suggested he was not entirely convinced. Behind Todd's professional demeanor lay a flicker of skepticism. "But," Todd continued, "are you prepared for the possibility that this could fail?" Eli's stomach churned at the question, but rather than faltering, a new determination sparked within him. "Failure is part of the process. I've accepted that. What matters is the drive to learn from it. I won't let it deter me. This is bigger than myself. It's about the impact ideals can create." He had tapped into something raw and factual. His resolve crystallized beneath the surface. But then the moment lingered, soaking in curiosity and trepidation. It was now or never. "And what about you? We both know the conversation hasn't been easy between us. What do you think? Eli challenged gently, grasping for Todd's candid perspective. Honestly, I want to see you succeed, Eli, Todd confessed, but his tone carried an undercurrent of urgency. I just need to know you're taking this as seriously as I am. No half measures. Todd's words echoed Eli's internal monologue. Yet, was he truly ready to break free from the shackles of doubt that had plagued him for far too long? This wasn't simply a meeting. It was a defining moment that would shape not only his professional trajectory, but also his personal growth. But as Todd leaned back in his chair, lost in thought, Eli couldn't shake the lingering question of whether he valued his partnership enough. Would Todd's support be unwavering if his conviction faltered? And what if mistakes were made along the way? Would he find encouragement or distance instead? The clock in the cafe ticked ominously as Eli braced himself for an answer that could shift everything. He was poised on the edge of transformation, ready to dive into a future that felt both thrilling and treacherous. As Todd glanced back down at his phone, Eli felt the walls closing in, a mix of hope and dread swirling within him. Would whatever had drawn Todd's focus reignite their conversation, or would it further complicate the fragile alliance they were trying to establish? The air was heavy with expectation, and Eli struggled with a question that loomed larger by the second. Was he truly ready for whatever might come next? A palpable tension hung in the air as Todd's gaze returned to Eli, momentarily breaking through the distractive haze surrounding them. Eli felt as if he were suspended in midair, the ground beneath him uncertain. With each passing second, doubt coiled tighter around his chest, but he didn't want to withdraw now. The choice rested with him, a reflection of the journey he had carved through self-doubt and uncertainty. "Okay, I hear you," Eli started, collecting his thoughts. "I understand this needs to be solid. It can't merely be a dream." His words steadily dismantled the wavering confidence he'd often shown. "So, what would it take for you to fully commit to this?" It was a bold question, but he realized that turning the conversation toward Todd might reveal more about their partnership than he initially intended. Todd shifted in his seat, the stillness amplifying the moment. It was more than just a query, it was a challenge to Todd's own investment in the vision. Eli watched as a flicker of calculation crossed Todd's face. "A concrete framework," he iterated. "Timelines, budgets, a team. You can't go in half-cocked. I need to see you not just dreaming, but executing a well-laid strategy." Eli absorbed each word like a sponge, his mind already racing ahead. Was he ready to create that framework? The thought of concrete proposals sent a chill down his spine. It felt daunting, yet invigorating. The possibility of truly crafting something ambitious called to him. "I'll make a list tonight," he declared, emboldened by the intensity of their discourse. The notion of drafting a formal plan instilled in him a renewed sense of purpose. He visualized colored charts and timelines mapping out progress, tapping into a plethora of resources he hadn't considered before. He had researched, but had never truly sketched an executable layout. Each possibility shimmered like a beacon, lighting a way forward that felt less like a burden and more like an adventure. But as he brainstormed, anxiety brewed beneath the surface. What if he began this journey only to discover he was inadequate? Eli wrestled with that familiar enemy. The niggling voice in the corner of his mind laughed cynically at the thought of him failing once more. He inhaled deeply, determined to silence it. "I'm ready for accountability," Eli continued, now feeling a surge of authenticity. "If you're willing to walk alongside me, I'll take this structure seriously. I want to share the risk and reach for something greater than myself." Todd regarded Eli as if weighing the sincerity in his words against the tempest of uncertainty. "Accountability goes both ways," he replied, finally meeting Eli's fiery gaze, a glimmer of acceptance emerging. Eli's heart raced with the thrill of action. This was more than just a discussion about ideas. It was a pivotal moment in forging a partnership that could withstand the trials ahead. But as Todd leaned forward, articulating specifics for the timeline, doubts emerged anew. Would his willingness to pivot through discomfort really prepare him for the road ahead? Just then, Eli's phone vibrated, a discordant interruption that brought a wave of panic. He glanced at the screen, an unexpected email from a past contact he thought he had buried in the archives of his mind. Carefully, he opened it, reading quickly. What he found sent a jolt through him, a potential opportunity, an invitation that could tie directly into his goals. But with this development, a new weight settled upon him. Had his timing come too soon? Was he truly prepared to confront the consequences of seizing this connection? The embraces of doubt wrapped around him yet again as he turned to Todd, who remained unaware of Eli's internal turmoil. "Actually, Todd, hold on a second," Eli interjected, the email still on his screen, the words blurring before his eyes. "I think something just came up that could change everything." As Todd's eyebrows raised in intrigue, Eli felt the familiar pulse of uncertainty again. Was he ready to embrace this chance for growth, or would the fear of failure push him back into familiar shadows? The question loomed larger than ever, demanding that he make a decision, and fast. Eli stood on the precipice of transformation, a deliberate pause encapsulating a swift surge of possibility racing through his veins. He felt the weight of his choice balanced precariously on a knife's edge. The email held the potential to connect his newfound vision with an opportunity he thought was lost. Unsure if it was fate or folly, he hesitated because embracing this moment meant leaping into the unknown without a safety net. As he turned to Todd, Eli felt the residual doubts creeping back, murmuring harsh reminders of past failures. "I might have a chance," he said, struggling for clarity while resisting panic. The prospect of a collaboration with an influential local business owner glimmered like a beacon, yet felt daunting. "But I need to be certain I'm ready to follow through. What if I can't sustain this initial excitement?" Todd watched him with narrowed eyes, gauging Eli's conflicted emotions. "You can't let fear paralyze you," he advised gently. "Every successful endeavor comes with risk. The key is showing up ready to fight for what you want." A tide of realization washed over Eli as he processed Todd's words. They rang true, reverberating through the breadth of his reality. Recent experiences. Hadn't he just rekindled relationships with Marcus and Julia? Hadn't he reached out to Todd himself? The essential truth emerged. Success was built upon the willingness to forge connections, confront vulnerability, and embrace uncertainty. "Thank you," Eli replied, a sense of grounding renewing his ambition. "I won't let fear define my path anymore." After a deep breath, he opened the email, pulse racing, heart thumping, as he began to type a response. The words flowed from him, reflecting his vision and ambitions, affirming a commitment he refused to retreat from. He would take on this opportunity with tenacity, blending grounded realism with aspirational enthusiasm. Amid the clattering of cups in the cafe, he hit send, and with that click, something shifted within him. A catharsis, a shedding of old weight, followed by the electrifying rush of authenticity and intention. His resolve crystallized further. He could forge connections between visionary ideas and actionable steps. The conversation that unfolded next was significantly different. Eli dove into logistical details, sharing actionable ideas and plans, knowing that the vision he now held close to his heart had to be as tangible as it was ambitious. Todd soon mirrored his enthusiasm, each suggestion reframing obstacles as opportunities. They began sketching the framework, defining roles, crafting a timeline, considering the makeup of their prospective team. Todd's pragmatic insight elevated the conversation, providing the balance Eli needed. They were no longer bound by past grievances. Instead, they were building a bridge toward a partnership rooted in mutual respect and aspiration.
By the time they pushed back their chairs, the energy between them had shifted into something productive. No longer adversaries weighed down by history, but collaborators entwined in a singular purpose. They stood to shake hands, a gesture sealing their commitment. Eli stepped into the evening air, the weight of the world not dragging him down, but propelling him forward. He reflected on the once imposing walls he had built around himself. Those defenses were now crumbling, revealing a landscape rich with connections and opportunities. In the months that followed, a chorus of partnerships flourished. Eli's store burgeoned into a vibrant hub of creativity where local artisans displayed their work, an embodiment of everything he dared to dream. Lily felt his renewed spirit, her eyes sparkling as she witnessed her father shifting their narrative together with the community. Eli had come full circle. He no longer operated out of fear or isolation. Instead, he had morphed into an inspiring figure rooted in vulnerability and collaboration. He embraced his commitments joyfully, and they lent his life new purpose. And through the cacophony of revitalization, Eli finally grasped a profound truth. He was not just persisting, he was thriving. In the brightness of each day, he glanced at the shelves stocked with creativity, feeling a sense of contentment. He had built a legacy that honored his father's ideals while setting a new course for his daughter's future. This was what growth looked like. This was the personal achievement that redefining success truly encompassed.
Of resilience, connection, and fulfillment. Now the world awaited his next step, his heart beating firmly with an audacity that proclaimed, "I've arrived," and he was eager to continue to evolve. Don't wait even one more second to share this completion of Eli's inspiring journey. You need to subscribe now for more incredible emotional stories that empower individual growth. Leave a like now so the algorithm knows to showcase these transformative tales. Comment below your reactions and theories about Eli's journey. Your insights are vital. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this satisfying conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.